Reality therapist perception.
Hello and welcome back to Reactivity TV, where we give our therapist takes to every trending show that you are currently watching. And this week we are giving our therapist takes to Succession, Season 4, Episode 8. And that was intense. I was stressed.
Yeah. I was really stressed. I was stressed like this was my election.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and of course, it's like, reminiscent of our actual history, which is also kind of scary. But it was like equal parts, like so well done in that, like the anxiety and the stress, like went the whole way through. And also like really hard to watch because of that and everything else going on. But this was, whoa, it was a lot. Yeah. I had to like sit with the episode for a couple of days before like getting here today, thinking about what we're going to talk about.
No, I agree. I feel like that's kind of like the hangover you get after an election too, where you're just like letting it sink in.
Yes.
And that was this episode.
Yeah. Right. And I was thinking about how like every week we talk about how like part of our role as therapists is to be as empathic as possible. And we like let our humanity show in Reactivity TV. But typically we can like find empathy for these characters, except Shiv. But this episode, I was really having trouble like with empathy across the board because I felt like we saw maybe different shades of everyone this episode.
Yeah, no, you're right. I was almost going to say like it was like the worst of everyone came out, but it wasn't the worst of everyone. It was just, there was just a lot of different moving parts. Like the three of them are just not together anymore at all. And we just saw the breakup.
Yeah. Yes. Some a little bit more passive and some a little bit more active. But I don't know if it was necessarily the worst, but like certainly a more honest version of people than like ever before. Like they really are just like letting it all fly this season, this episode.
Yeah. What were some like shocking things to you in this one?
Shocking? Oh gosh.
Maybe not shocking because sometimes you're like, well, I expect that from you, but it's still like, oh, are you serious?
Oh gosh. I mean, watching Kendall this whole episode, that was like, I had a lot of reactions to Kendall. I mean, I think to each one, like the Shiv and Tom fight part 2, I was like, had an "Are you serious?" moment. Also kind of seeing the way they invoked Logan at certain points and like the way that they were trying to manipulate one another. All of that, just like, I was having like reactions to all of that.
Yeah.
What about you?
Agreed to all of those. And a big one was how much this episode, as much as like we felt the anxiety of like an election, how much it wasn't about an election and how much these 3 people have such control over the state of the world. And even Roman admitted it, like this is not a political decision. But it's about politics. And so it's so scary to think that he's just doing something for their benefit. Yeah, their personal gain, and doesn't care about how the rest of the country ends up.
I know. Well, he kept saying like nothing matters, which is like something that I definitely want to talk about today. But I mean, that was frightening to think about like the way that yes, the election like didn't matter actually. And that there are all these memes about like with Kendall, I forget, like one of them was like, I'm mad at my sister, so I'm going to like blow up the Republic or something like that. but that's like kind of facts. That's what happened. So that was really something.
Yeah. So I mean, talk about that a little bit about the nothing matters.
Yes. Okay. So if you've been watching Reactivity for TV for a while, like, and I know that I'm a big, like, recap podcaster, listen to her. And so I was listening to a lot of like Succession podcasts, the official Succession podcast, plus a couple of others. And throughout this season, especially from episode 3 and after, people have been referring to Roman as nihilistic, and which essentially means that things are meaningless, like kind of taking that role or that set of beliefs. And we really saw that come through with Roman. And I mean, I think like the subtext for me in this season, again, like episode 3 to now, like is like how each of them deals with grief, and particularly Roman. I feel like Roman, your grief is showing in every episode. And so I think we're seeing this nihilism a lot more as a reaction to the loss of Logan. And we even hear him say, literally, dad is dead, nothing matters, as a reason to just kind of make a call on a state, for Mencken or whatever. And we kind of see him unravel. We see him just act so recklessly and impulsively, again, with that like nothing matters attitude. And he feels so rudderless, right? Like his dad is gone, and his dad is someone who he really looked up to and admired. The showrunner had said, Roman is searching for a father figure now that Logan is gone. And so it's not surprising that he will try to find another father figure. And he's kind of found that maybe in Mencken. And we also see that one of his biggest supporters, Jerry, he has blown up that relationship, and she is now gone. And so he has no parents. Yeah, he's really alone and having a hard time finding his way. And so, like, again, this is another way that we kind of see grief expressed, is through this questioning of what's the meaning, what's the purpose, what's it all for. And Roman, at this point, it doesn't seem like much matters. I mean, he said at the end of it, like, we just made a really good night of television. And it's like, no, Roman, like, it's much bigger implications than that. But he's so blinded by grief.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So where's your empathy there?
I guess my empathy is that I'm seeing him as someone who's grieving. Yeah. And I think people are having like really harsh reactions to Roman from what I've seen and what I've heard. And understandably, I mean, he was acting maniacally, and again, really impulsively and recklessly, and kind of like a stubborn child, really antagonistic. He was hard to like. But I think, again, I see like, wow, you are just so sad and angry.
Yeah.
I guess that's where my empathy comes in.
You got it.
I did it.
You found it.
I did it. What about you? What stuck out to you this week?
So yes, part 2 of the Shiv and Tom argument. Another wow.
It was another hard watch.
Yeah. Oh, that was so... Oh. I mean, they just went at it again. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of started a little soft. Like she wanted to be soft, and he wasn't there. So they just went into it. And that's how, I mean, we all kind of work. It's like human nature to sort of just like feed off of somebody else. And this is also part of their pattern. Not to mention that they had this huge blow up argument, and that's where they left off before. So of course they're going to get right back into it.
Yeah.
A lot of times people think that they can just cut things off and move on, or not revisit something. But that's not ever the case. It's going to come up, whether it's in the next conversation or 3 months from now. Yeah. It's not dead. So we saw that happen between them. And so a lot of back and forth between them, of course, with Tom saying that Shiv kind of killed Logan. Wow.
Yeah, especially because that was something she was feeling guilty about, that she may have in some way caused his death.
Right. And just like had such a negative interaction with him right before he died too, that could have potentially caused him to fall to his death. So yeah, that was obviously a soft spot. This is also fresh. They had to remind me at the end of this episode that they haven't even buried him yet.
Yeah.
I totally forgot. Which is just like great planning on their part. And then, so she fights back and ends up saying, I'm pregnant. She ends up telling him. And this was a moment where it almost could have been like a white flag moment. It could have been like I'm done with this, or I just need to, like I need to come out of this argument for a moment to tell you this. It also could have been this other power play. And that's how he saw it. And because he saw it that way and met her again with some more contempt, that he questioned her. It's like, is this a play? Is this, is that even true? And she totally shuts down. She stonewalls him. She's like, probably in shock that he could have responded in that way. Yeah. She ends up leaving the room. Wow.
Yeah, we are seeing Tom show up so differently. And so like we're also seeing Shiv like use different tactics to try to engage him, because nothing she's ever done before is working. Like he in his own way is not backing down. And that really surprised me. But one thing, not to nitpick Shiv, because I feel like she was on I had more sympathy, I think, for Shiv in this interaction. But what I was frustrated by was when she came in, her apology was not an apology. She was like, I wanted to apologize for some things. And she didn't actually apologize or say what things. And then she said something like, well, my dad just died. So like, essentially, this is the reason that I was saying these things or acting this way. And so I wanted to like highlight that, and also like go back to what I was saying about Roman, that like, I think it's okay. And I think understandable, and something that we should consider, like the context of like what might create someone to be maybe more emotionally reactive than whatever someone else.
Even with someone like Logan or someone like Tom, where he witnessed Shiv and Logan's relationship, all of their relationships with Logan. So he's made up this idea of like, but you hated him. And so he doesn't see how she could still be grieving. He doesn't see how she could still be hurting. And that assumption is not doing him any favors in him trying to find empathy for her.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Like her grief is going to be very complicated. And with all that being said, just because we have trauma and just because we are going through something, it does not give us a free pass to completely like lash out or act out in some ways. And I felt like that was what Shiv was kind of trying to do, is not really take accountability for her actions and more say like, well, my dad is dead. So like I get a free pass. And I'm not suggesting that we do that for Roman either. Like what he did and the way that he acted and the way that he behaved was like so problematic. Yeah, it's rooted in trauma. It's rooted in grief. And I think that's, again, as therapists, like what we often work through with clients is, yeah, these like horrible things may have happened to you, or these really stressful or traumatic things may have happened to you. And the way that they are showing up in you now is negatively impacting your life or your relationships. And how can we work through that in a healthier manner so that you can have healthier relationships? And again, that's just like not happening here. And again, granted, it's been days since Logan died, so it's still so fresh, but just like going through something hard doesn't give us an excuse to act like an asshole. Hot take potentially, but
no, I totally agree with you. And I also think that the people around you need to be mindful of what you could be going through and not what I think you're going through.
Right. Yeah. Not make assumptions, for sure. Absolutely. And I think, yeah, being on the receiving end, like, yeah, give someone the benefit of the doubt, of course, or like have a little bit more patience. Like there's stuff that Tom could have definitely done better in this, for sure.
And I mean, I think, yeah, you and I have been so anti-Shiv this whole time. But this episode, it was one of the times where I saw her being softer, similar to when we talked about when they were at Logan's apartment after he had just died, and she was so upset on the stairs with Tom. That was like one of the first moments where I was like, I like you. Oh, wow. Like, I do have empathy for you. And wow, this is really difficult for you. Yeah. And I feel like that carried out during this episode. Yes, was she like still conniving and doing her thing? Yeah. But also she took this backseat role, and she was not asserting herself in a way that in the past, when she has, it's been really difficult to watch and really difficult for her to be likable.
Right. Yeah. Well, and as you're saying that, it's making me think of Kendall, and maybe this is a good segue, but when he was pretty vulnerable and kind of soft in this episode too, and that kind of made him more likable as well. And we don't see them like that. Like, we don't see them vulnerable. We don't see them with their guard down. And of course, why would we, right? Like, Logan did not respect vulnerability. He did not respect that at all. Totally weak. And he made plenty of comments to Shiv about like her being a woman and like AKA emotional, and how that was a problem. And so
of course she can't be.
Of course. And so like, again, it's one of those things where it's like so understandable why they are the way that they are. And it makes it hard for us to like get close to Shiv, to like feel connected to her, because she has this wall up. And yeah, so we see kind of on Kendall's side, a tender moment with he and Shiv. And that's where I like really, I had such a hard time watching Shiv receive him in that, because it felt like she was seeing this as an opportunity to manipulate him.
When she said he's a good guy.
You're a good guy. You're a good guy. And so he's like basically having a therapy session with Shiv, and like being really honest with her and really trusting her about like his insecurity with Roman being really close to Mencken, and feeling like he might want kind of like the main CEO gig and all of that stuff. And so anyway, they're having this tender moment, and he says to her, I don't think I'm a good father. And she says like, you're okay. And then he says, no, the poison drips through. And I don't know, what do you think of that?
Just that he is so disappointed that he's ended up like his dad. And he's actually seeing that now.
Yeah. I know that it was a heartbreaking moment. And I think it does, like, the poison does drip through, and we, like, in our world, like, might refer to it not as poison, but as intergenerational trauma. And we see, I mean, they're doing such a great job. I mean, this series is so well done, but like, they're doing such a great job in showing us the parallels between specifically Kendall and Logan in this season in particular, where like, we know from season 1 that Logan was abused as a kid, physically at least. And we know that Logan's been abusive to his children physically and emotionally. And we see the remnants of that. We also hear Logan say throughout the series, like, everything I do for my kids. And we've heard Kendall say that at least 4 times in the last like 2 episodes, that he's, again, and we talked about this too, like justifying all of his actions with that. That is such a Logan learning. And so we see, like, and that's kind of what happens in families where like the trauma does seep through, because the person that's gone through something traumatic, it shows up in the way that they interact, the way that they relate, the way that they parent. And it's only when we heal ourselves that we can kind of break a cycle or maybe make the drip not as poisonous. And so I just kind of wanted to highlight that he's right. And we see it in Kendall, and we see it in non-fictional characters as well. Yeah.
Well, and in him noticing it too, which like you and I also see in our work all the time, that people tend to feel like I'm stuck here and like I don't think there's a way for me to do it any different because I don't know any different. And I've never seen any different. And he kind of seems like he's at that impasse where he's just like, okay, well, now I know that I have these tendencies and I don't know if I can be I don't know if I can be a good dad. I don't know if I can do things differently than my dad did.
Yeah.
And then we see him totally shut down in this episode, and he's quiet. He's literally just like observing everything. And yeah, you can just see how much of that's affecting him.
Yeah, it was really weighing on him this episode in particular. Yeah. This episode. Wow. It was tough. I mean, a next episode is going to be a really rough one. It looks like it's the funeral episode. And as far as we know, it's Roman who's eulogizing Logan. And so I wonder how that will go. You know, the optimist in me wants to think that Roman in like putting his eulogy together will have an opportunity to process his grief. But that might be a little too optimistic of me, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah. I'm almost kind of like surprised that they're not just having Connor do it.
I know. Oh my gosh. Well, the way that he like handled his recession speech might have gotten him fired from that as an opportunity. Yeah. Okay. Well, 2 more episodes to go.
2 more episodes for us to cover.
Yes. So we'll be here. We'll be back for episode 9 of this season of Succession. Bye.